Hello and welcome. This is the final episode of Talk Turkey for 2023, isn't it, Murat?
Hi, Nevşin. Yes, it is. And again, it's once again, I think we can say that they're exciting days in Turkey, but it's becoming a bit boring because each time I think we say the same, but then new unexpected things can happen every day in Turkey. And I think we are going through one of those moments once again.
That is right. Turkish politics is like full speed. It's like you're on a full speed train. Unbelievable, you know. Full speed train with a lot of surprises, though. Yeah, so we're closing the year with the news about the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem Imamoglu. He's a really renowned figure by international politics, by the actors of international politics, in a sense. He was elected in 2019, if you remember. When he was elected and for the first time, they actually annulled the first election. Then the election was repeated, and he actually won again with even more votes. And after like 20 years, he's been the first person to take back Istanbul from AK Party. He was the candidate of CHP, actually both CHP and E Party, two main opposition parties. CHP is the center-left and E Party is a center-right opposition party. They're together. They're forming an election, like an opposition front, a table of six. And Imamoglu was E Party's and CHP's candidate, and he won the Istanbul elections. In this photograph, he's sitting with his wife, Dilek Imamoglu. So, yeah, anyways, the news about him is after the 2019 elections, in the first election when he won, you know, debate started. Was it in accordance, or should it be annulled, not annulled, whatever? He traveled to Brussels, and when he was returning, reporters asked him about the decision to renew the election, and he used the term "fools," the fool. So actually, he was referring to the interior minister who talked about Imamoglu, who was traveling to Brussels. The interior minister accused him of going to Brussels and complaining about Turkey to foreign powers, right? Actually, he was referring to Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu, but then a court case started against him, claiming that he used the term fool for the members of the Supreme Election Board. And so the court case is about him swearing at public officials.
And the court case swear word being fool. I mean, we need to underline this. That's
fool, yeah. And the court case was going on. The last case was like a couple of days ago. So he is now, there's a verdict, and he's sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment. In Turkey, if the sentence is like not about 2 years, you don't serve the prison sentence. But he received a political ban for 2 years. That's a really crucial decision. Obviously, the decision is not finalized yet because this decision is going to go to the Court of Appeals and then the Court of Cassation. So it's not final decision yet. But if we get a final decision from the Court of Cassation, then it's going to be a definitive moment for the Turkish politics, because Ekrem Imamoglu has been one of the potential presidential candidates who would have the possibility to run against the President Erdogan in 2023 elections. So this is a decisive moment. And now everybody's curious now what's going to happen, what's going to be the next step of the opposition, who is going to make use of this decision. So in the final days of 2023, that's what Turks are talking about.
And there's so many conspiracy theories about it, and it's really coming from both sides as well, both from the opposition front and pro-government side as well. I mean, first of all, this is, of course, unacceptable in terms of democracy, the rule of law, freedom of speech, and this is clearly a political decision. I've been also following the Western media and statements coming from the West, especially from the European Union. All these elements have been discussed. However, I would like to start with one particular point, which has been rather missed in the West by media, politicians, and analysts as well. Because while this decision is certainly unacceptable, it is not necessarily a bad news for the opposition in Turkey. Why? Two main reasons. First of all, the feeling of injustice usually changes political dynamics in Turkey. One may claim that injustice has been there in many cases in the last few years, but this is also rather different because the entire opposition and even a considerable amount of AKP supporters see this ruling as a political one, an unfair one. There's a recent survey as well by Turkey Report, a polling firm in Turkey. They did this immediately after the decision, and according to this, 14% only believe that this is a fair one, while 64% see it as unfair and political, and 22% has no position. And one point is very important, only 31% of AKP voters find this fair. So as our viewers may remember, this was the case when the Istanbul election was cancelled too, and Imamoglu won the renewed election with a large margin, actually. And more importantly, a similar case in 1998 played an important role in the political career of Erdogan, and it made him actually the prime minister and then the president of Turkey. Second reason, this decision shows that things are not going well actually for the government in Turkey. They have major concerns about the upcoming elections in 2023. Trauma of 2019 municipal elections is still there, losing Istanbul, and reaching 50% plus one is more and more difficult for the president. That's why it's not necessarily a bad news for the opposition. Maybe it's a bad news for democracy, but not necessarily bad news maybe in the short and long term. As I keep saying, if the opposition plays its cards right, they certainly have a big chance in 2023. However, this should also be a reminder for the opposition that it's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be easy because it's not a fair game. That's why they don't have a luxury to make mistakes. We may also discuss this later, maybe. This decision has also placed Imamoglu on top of the potential candidates for president. He was sort of out of the game in the last few months, but now his position at least stronger than a few days ago. There are, of course, risks connected to this because of the decision of the court is approved by the higher court. Then there's an option of like jail and political ban, and then this will also leave the opposition without a candidate last minute. That's one of the issues, probably. And his own party is rather divided about the issue because the president of CHP, Kılıçdaroğlu, would like to run too. But other opposition parties, especially for the second biggest opposition party, Meral Akşener's Good Party, they seem to be more in favor of Imamoglu nowadays. So actually, the winners of the last few days in terms of at least popularity, we may say that Imamoglu and Akşener, and then the loser probably being Kılıçdaroğlu, the president of the CHP. How do you see it? What is the mood at the moment?
Yeah, the mood has been changing. So we have three main potential candidates. One is Ekrem Imamoglu. The second is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the head of CHP. He's a wise guy. He's older, wise, you know, like he's very calm and everything. And he's the leader of CHP, and he brought all this opposition together, like 6 leaders. So he's known for that. And also Mayor of Ankara, Mansur Yavaş, he comes from a very far-right background in Turkey. So these were 3 potential candidates. And when you look at the polls, actually, Mansur Yavaş and Ekrem İmamoğlu, they seem to be ahead of Mr. Erdogan. If they run against each other, like if Imamoglu runs against Erdogan, he clearly wins. If Mansur Yavaş wins against Erdogan, he clearly wins. And Kılıçdaroğlu is in a limbo, you know, not for certain. He's not seen as like a strong enough candidate among the voters for now. That's what polls tells us. So there had always been like people were speculating who's going to run. We know that Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, he wants to run because the main theory of the opposition is that they say, okay, we're gonna change the system. So we're gonna go to the elections in a presidential system. But what the opposition promises is that they say we're gonna win the election and then we're gonna directly change the system. So the president will not be an important character anymore. It'll be a symbolic one. So having like a young, vibrant fighter type president is not ideal. We need a president like a wise person, like a calm, who's balancing. So Kılıçdaroğlu sees himself more fit to that position. But then, people who are against this theory are saying, well, okay, this might be your ideal, but we are going to election in this system. So we need a winner character. We need a person to win the election, because it doesn't mean anything. Whatever your ideal is, unless you win the election, you cannot change the system. So we need a winner person. So this is why Ekrem Imamoglu was one of the potential candidates. Well, right after the decision, the court announced their decision, we've seen, first of all, like a tremendous getting together, uniting among the wings of the opposition. Right after the court decision, the head of E Party, Meral Akşener, she went to see Mr. Imamoglu and just hugged him, like, said, "Don't worry, we're behind you," and everything. So this was like a very symbolic photograph. Where was Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu when there was a court decision? He was in Germany. That was such an unfortunate moment. He went to Germany. It was known that that particular day there was the court case, and the court would give the verdict. Everybody knew that. But Kılıçdaroğlu says, well, we did not accept the verdict this particular day. We did not expect this verdict at all. So he went to Germany. His plan was to have a presser in German parliament, Bundestag, with his brand new advisor, Mr. Jeremy Rifkin, American ecologist. So they were going to have this presser and everything. But the court verdict has come, and it was such a scandal. Everybody was looking for Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. People said, why in this particular day? This is one of the main characters of Turkish politics, like him or not. Ekrem İmamoğlu, he's the head of the biggest city in Turkey, Istanbul. It's an internationally important city. He's leading the city as a mayor and everything. That's a decisive court verdict. Where is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu? He was criticized, and he was in Germany. Then he came back, but it was a little late and everything. And then the day after, all the opposition leaders, 6 of them, they gathered in front of the municipality of Istanbul, and they gave a united message that we are behind Ekrem İmamoğlu. They criticized the court verdict. They say this is against the law, this is against democracy, this is against freedom of speech. We are behind him, and we're not going to let it go. They gave that message, strong message. So this kind of united the opposition and mobilized the opposition voters. This is what the opposition voters desperately need. They need mobilization. The people are angry. The inflation is insane in Turkey, insane. The prices are rising like every week. It's unbearable. There's a rent crisis. We cannot find housing. Rents are really high. People cannot find a roof over their heads. So people are angry, and people are sometimes seeing opposition as being like not adequate enough. And this was a decisive. For the first time, 6 of them, they came together, they rose up, and they stood against something. This also gave hope to the opposition voters.
And there was a huge crowd, right?
There was about 70,000 people in front of Istanbul municipality, which is like a significant number on a winter day in insane Istanbul traffic. Also, it's a huge problem getting from some point to another. Is an
literally in the middle of city. It's not really an area where you can gather.
No. Yeah, exactly. So that's a significant number. That's the name. But however, then the first impression was, okay, so this is a decisive moment, and Ekrem İmamoğlu should run, right? So this was the first impression. But then now people started saying, well, making him a candidate is going to be such a risky choice, because this could be the case. Like the opposition could say, okay, İmamoğlu is our candidate, and he can start running, and the Court of Cassation can just, give their ruling, say like a month before the election, or even a week before the election. And if the Court of Cassation says, yes, this verdict is true, then he cannot run for presidency. He cannot be candidate anymore. And then Erdogan is going to be on his own. So now the figures of the opposition, or like the pundits close to the opposition, they started saying this is going to be a really, really risky move. If we decide İmamoğlu can run, then all of a sudden a political ban against him can be introduced, because this government is playing this game dirty. They've been playing this dirty for the last 10 years. I mean, they don't recognize any democracy or ethics or whatnot, you know. So they say it's going to be really risky. Maybe Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is the best choice for now. Now some pundits are saying this. But the tricky part is, the part that I don't really understand. I mean, literally, our brains are burning with conspiracy theories here. Because all pundits close to government, close to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, have been criticizing this court decision also. They claim this is also this is actually a conspiracy against Erdogan to show him weak, to show him as if he's afraid of the opposition. He's afraid of Imamoglu running as a candidate. This shows him weak and everything. So pundits, you know, and even ministers, you know, ministers, a lot of them made statements, even Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu or Justice Minister Bekir Bozdağ, they are like, they see a conspiracy against Erdogan. So everybody's seeing a conspiracy. I don't know. I don't understand anymore.
Well, it depends. Like, I don't know what outcome they were expecting out of this decision and whether what's happening is in line with their expectation. I mean, for this, we need to understand, I guess, also what the AKP-MHP alliance, People's Alliance, they try to do. I mean, in the last episode, we discussed a little bit about this grand strategy, or if there is a grand strategy in foreign policy. And our point was that there's no grand strategy. So maybe this is also valid for domestic politics too. I mean, I don't know if you played video games when you were younger, but in video games, when you are totally desperate, you just press all keys simultaneously and you hope that something will come out of this and just for you to advance or win. This also could be the policy of the governing alliance nowadays. I mean, as you said, there are many conspiracy theories coming from both sides. But maybe it is as simple as it looks. Maybe they simply don't want Imamoglu to run. Maybe it's as simple as that. I mean, some people tend to believe that AKP doesn't make mistakes and there's always a strategy and we may not even understand this. But it's not really the case. AKP has been doing so many mistakes, actually, and that's also why we see so many U-turns every day. So we shouldn't, of course, underestimate what they can do to stay in power, but we shouldn't overestimate their strategies either. I mean, this would be a major mistake. The opposition should rather focus on its own game plan instead. I mean, they can see this ruling as an opportunity. They have the wind at their back and they need to use this wind as well. And it may also mean that they take some risks because as the title of this episode says, it is a turning point. 2023 is a turning point. And probably we should discuss this a little bit too, because probably we have been repeating this in last 20 years for each election. But maybe this time it is really a turning point, because it may be the turning point for the normalization of country or the country going totally in the wrong direction. So there are certainly major problems, but the country is not lost yet. I mean, we can still talk about a strong opposition. They can even come together, work together. We couldn't even imagine this a few years ago. We can still talk about a strong civil society under all this pressure. Even media, I mean, they are alive and kicking through alternative channels. It's not easy to be a journalist, but they continue to be active. But many people see it as a last opportunity to make Turkey normal again. As we say in Turkey, make Turkey ehişte, so again. So people are, I think, tired of polarization, tension, problems. People would like to have a better life. It's as simple as this. I mean, it's not really about being pro this, pro that. But if the opposition wins, this feeling will play a major role. If opposition succeeds to explain to millions that Turkey can be normalized again and things can get better, I think they still have a big chance. And in case of an opposition victory, I also believe that things can change relatively quickly, because Turkey is still a rather dynamic country. And all basic elements are still there. I mean, this won't make Turkish democracy like Nordic countries. No, unfortunately, not really. But Turkey can easily go back to the Southern European, Mediterranean democratic standards in a relatively short time. And economy is a major issue, of course. It's also, I think, number one for the elections too. We have been discussing this so many times. But Turkish economy can also recover rather quickly, because despite everything, it is still a country of production. There is a vibrant private sector. It is still a country of tourism, and changing image may also attract even more Western tourists. And Turkey can also attract production and investments moving away from China nowadays, because there are major developments in the global scene as well. And this may also create opportunities for Turkey. I mean, there are risks, but if it's managed well, I think there are also big opportunities. By playing its cards well, Turkey has still a potential to be a major player in the Western world. So for all these reasons, it is a turning point. And I believe that people understand this well. I don't know if I'm maybe too optimistic observing these developments from Brussels. How do you see it?
Well, I mean, obviously the government has made many mistakes, but then the opposition has made many mistakes also. So that's why people are not, even the voters of the opposition, they're not certain that there's going to be a political change, basically. By the way, I saw a polling. Actually, it's really interesting. Usually it's vice versa, but now majority wants change over stability. AK Party was always like the beacon of stability, or this is how they presented themselves. It's like, Erdogan's a strong figure, symbolized stability with even like a strong hand, iron
but
fist.
Also stability was a good term, because the economy was doing relatively well.
And now they're asking people, would you rather have a change or stability? More people said change rather than stability. So this is a first. In Turkey, actually. However, I mean, coming to like how opposition made mistakes, people are drawing parallels between Hungary and Turkey, because Hungary, Orban is an Erdogan-like figure, has been leading Hungary for quite some time now. He's a controversial figure, an autocrat, whatnot, populist, whatnot. And in the latest elections, there was this hope that, like in Turkey, opposition came together in Hungary, and they came up with one candidate, with one policy, this and that. And actually, similar to Turkey, there was, I'm sorry if I'm spelling his name wrong, but Karatsoni, right? The mayor of Hungary was to run. He was one of the potential candidates. But the very last day, he retreated his candidacy. And Markizhey, again a mayor, but coming from a very conservative background, he ran for the opposition. And they lost against Mr. Orban. They lost. One thing Mr. Orban did, he combined the election, the parliamentary election, with a referendum. Referendum was about a constitutional change, about banning LGBTI propaganda for children, whatnot, right? So he used referendum as a leverage. This could also be the case in Turkey, because, coming to what opposition does wrong, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the head of CHP, he came up with an amendment in the law. He said, let's amend the law and add this clause that is going to guarantee veiled ladies that they're not going to face discrimination in the public positions. He came up with this amendment in the law, and then AK Party took it.
Maybe you can also explain why. I mean, what's the logic behind this? Why it comes from
logic
Social
is
Democratic
CHP,
Party?
Yeah. CHP is known as like a staunch secularist party, and they're trying to get votes from the AK Party base, AK Party voters. Some AK Party voters who are wearing the veil, they're afraid that if there's a governmental change, if CHP takes power, then they'll not be able to hold their governmental positions or public positions as being veiled. So Kılıçdaroğlu, brought this up, let's change the law and everything. But then AK Party said, so, right, okay, I have a better idea. Let's amend the constitution. Let's amend the constitution and, provide some guarantees for the veiled ladies in the constitution. And also they added a clause, which is kind of similar to Hungary. They said, and also we're going to add this, that a marriage could only be between a man and a woman. And so that we're going to protect the family, and then we're going to, cut the possibilities for gay marriages to ever happen in Turkey, right? So they introduced this to amendments. Now the opposition is trying to make calculations what to do. They don't want these clauses to go to referendum, because if they go to referendum, just like Hungary, AK Party and MHP, the political parties in power, are going to use this referendum as leverage in the parliamentary and presidential elections. So now opposition is trying to make their calculations. I don't know, Murat, it's really complicated.
I mean, to start with Orban, first of all, of course, he has never been behind in the polls. I mean, he has always been more popular than the opposition candidates. Here we are talking about, I mean, at least the average of different polling companies, we are talking about even 40 to 60% sort of difference where the opposition is leading. And secondly, the economy in Hungary, of course, there were problems, but we couldn't really talk about a major economic crisis. But you're right about all these mistakes. And I think the mistakes are mainly coming from the fact that the opposition is focusing on too much what the others will say, rather than focusing on their own game plan, their own strategies, their own policies. I mean, what a KP can say, how they can be accused. This was also behind the entire, for example, international relations strategy. I mean, so many of them are still very shy to reach out to EU, United States, to discuss with them what could happen after the elections. That's why I think in terms of the opposition strategy, the main point should be focusing on its own game. I mean, they are in a good position, and as long as they don't make major mistakes, I think this will not turn against them. They have the wind at their back, and they need to use this back very well. I mean, and for me, the strategy is very clear. I mean, first of all, and I believe that's what they are trying to do now, deciding on key messages of the united opposition so that they can unite around some key messages. It's very clear that these 6 parties, they cannot really agree on everything, because in this group, we can talk about Social Democrat Party, central right one with some nationalist leanings, sort of liberal conservative one, an Islamist one, and neo-Islamist one. So it's like really a mixed group, but they claim that they are the uniting element is democracy, so they can really unite again around this concept. And second issue, and this is probably the biggest one now, is really selecting one candidate and uniting behind him or her. I mean, this will need to come sooner or later. And this is also one of the most discussed probably issues in Turkey in the last few months. Third part of the strategy is really reaching out to the other parts of the society, whoever the candidate is, because especially Kurds will play a major role in this. So the candidate and key messages will certainly be important for this as well. That's also why, for example, many people were claiming that Imamoglu could be a better candidate, because many Kurds can also vote for him. On the other hand, there are always like pros and cons, and then the others are claiming that, but then maybe some nationalist voters will not support him. So there are all these balanced games, very fragile. And then the fourth element is also connected to what happened this week with this ruling, being ready for the crisis management. I mean, this ruling was a good example. A part of the opposition, especially I think Meral Akşener, managed as well. But we cannot say really the same thing for the main opposition party, CHP. They should be ready for such things, because such crises, similar ones or different ones, will happen. And they need some sort of strategy and close coordination. And then finally, the final and the most important element for me is getting ready for the election day as well, for securing the ballot boxes, because anything can happen. So they need to secure the ballot boxes, create alternative mechanisms to count and register the votes, and having a very clear communication strategy as well for the election night. So I know that they're already working on this to have many observers, lawyers, and all, but this will be really very important, and they have no luxury to make mistakes. And if they play well in line with this actually 5 points, I believe that they still have a good chance. There will be mistakes, there will be ups and downs. And I mean, some polls were suggesting that, for example, after the summer period, Erdogan was again gaining some support, but the last month is showing that maybe it's not really the case. And now we will see after this ruling as well, with ups and downs, but the opposition is still, I think, leading this. And even this ruling shows that there's some sort of at least panic or at least major concerns in the government side as well. I don't know.
Yeah, election security, they are working on it very, closely and very hard. I was speaking to one of the members of Gelecek Partisi, Selim Temurcu. He's an important figure because he used to be with AK Party. He used to be the head of Istanbul in AK Party. He had really important positions. He knows these things. He knows election security very well. He's working on that, and
probably he knows how things were working.
He know how things. And he said something very important. He said, we're working on having a server outside of Turkey, because they're going to be counting votes. They're going to have their alternative system, the opposition counting votes one by one, and they do that. They do communication through the internet, obviously. And he says we have to consider the probability that the internet could be off in Turkey. Even like if it's off for like an hour, it could be a game changer. So they're going to have alternative servers outside of Turkey. So I think this time, in that sense,
so foreign powers intervening, discourse is loading.
No, it's going to be it's opposition's own server. That could be like in Bulgaria or something.
Yeah. And
so my door is ringing. Do you want to wrap this up?
Sure. So I mean, we will discuss all these strategies in probably in the first episode of 2023 as well. So I guess we can wish a happy new year for all our viewers, and we will continue to discuss all these matters, and hopefully we will also have more news about the candidates and the election strategy of the opposition in the next few weeks.
Yep. Thank you. See you.
See you.